Salams, hello and good morning. My name is Jawad Ahmed Fareed and it's time to have a heart-to-heart chat about go-to-market or GTM for short. Go-to-market is not one concept, it's actually a collection of concepts. One and done. It's not a single event, it's actually a process. It's a sequence of steps. Those sequence of steps are based on an understanding of the product life cycles. Products behave, follow a certain arc. They are introduced, they are launched, they grow, they get traction, and they ultimately hit the mainstream market and then they decline. Is to understand who is this product meant for and how or why was that specific segment selected. Because if we understand this, then we can answer the next three set of questions. First question is, how do we get this segment to trust the work that we've done, trust our product enough where they're willing to try it? Getting to customer trial is often a series of experimentations. And once we've conducted a sequence or a series of these trials, we feel confident enough that we can get the product to launch. Typically, a product life cycle is also known as the S-curve. It's known as the S-curve because the shape that this graph or this chart represents. Product starts at the beginning, is launched, and it gets traction and ultimately stabilizes. So the shape of this curve looks like an S, and hence the term S-curve. Segment A or phase A of the product life cycle. In this specific piece, we walk through our journey from startup to launch. Second phase is where we try and figure out how to escalate, how to add growth and traction to a model, and let's just call this phase B. A third phase is when the product hits mainstream market and both sales as well as demand stabilizes and mature. There's a fourth stage, a final stage that we're not concerned with as much on the GTM side, and that focuses on decline. GTM strategy, first question that we have to answer is, who is our first customer? The first customer that's going to try a product. This customer generally comes from segment 0. You're a startup. Nobody knows you. You have no background. You have no history. You have no traction. You have no recognition, no brand name in the market that you're just about to step into. What kind of a person would give you a shot? Would risk trying a product from a no-name team with no background and history or track record? That person, that segment is segment 0. Most product teams have done their groundwork and they have something called an ideal customer profile. An ideal customer profile represents the perfect customer, the customer that you've designed this product for. The ideal customer profile that we've created for the product is actually going to be very different from the profile of the customers in segment 0. The profile of the product when it is in original startup launch discovery stages is very different from the profile of the product that has reached maturity, and hence the profile of customers is very different from the profile of customers that are likely to try it in the initial stages. Once your product has been discovered, once people have tried it, once you have testimonials, once you have social proof, it's easier to add growth and traction. You're no longer a no-name. You're no longer a team that has no background, history, or track record in the field. You have a few customers. Those customers have tried your product. Those customers can act as references. Two questions, or one question with two parts. How do we get a product in front of our customers? How do we convince the same customers to try and buy the product? What do customers in segment 0 look like? Assume, even for mature teams this happen on a regular basis, but assume that you're a green team. This is your first product launch. You've never done a product launch before. So you know that the ideal customer profile is most likely going to be different from the profile of a customer in segment 0. But what is going to be the profile of a customer in segment 0? Let's say you've designed a product that focuses on ad monetization and optimization. You have a product for customers who use digital platforms to sell their products, and they run a series of ad campaigns on all media properties that exist. Some of them are Google ads, some of them are Facebook ads, some of them are Insta ads, some of them are LinkedIn ads, and you've got a product, a very nice product that you've built for customers who advertise online to sell their product that optimizes ad spend, yield, and conversion. Your ideal customer profile is a customer that spends close to about $100,000 a year. Your business model is very simple. You say, okay, we'll give you a free trial. You try the product. Depending on how much we add to your conversion yield, we'll charge you a fee as a percentage of the incremental, the marginal, the additional, the new conversion that our platform helps you generate. So from a product perspective, when you think in terms of marketing and proposing and suggesting this to a customer, your ideal customer profile, spend about $100,000 a month or a year on digital advertising and that $100,000 generates about $300,000 in sales. We are confident, we are sure that we can take this $300,000 to $500,000. This is a no risk, no brainer product for you. Generate only $300,000 in sales for you, we won't charge you any fee at all. But if we generate $500,000 in sales for you based on the same ad spend, we'll just take a small fee, which will be a percentage of the difference between the $500,000 that we help you generate and the $3 that you were already generating. So your incremental expense is only going to be a function of the incremental sales that we've generated on your behalf. You have zero background or history or track record in that specific field. What happens if he generates no sales at all? So what happens if you fail to deliver on that promise? Your ideal customer profile may be a customer that spends $100,000 in digital ad spend, but that ideal customer profile may not be willing to make a bet on an unknown, no history, no background, no track record company. Your segment 0 customer will most likely share the same attributes that you have. Be a customer that has limited spend, limited budget, limited availability of funds, very high appetite for taking risks. Why? Because that is all that they can afford. If you're a rinky-dinky little startup, there's a reasonable chance that your segment 0 customer is also going to be a rinky-dinky little startup. And if they have that high appetite for risk and they're just as desperate as you are, then there's also a reasonable chance that they are just as broke as you are. What is the right point? You should start thinking about your go-to-market strategy. So if you already build the product, there's a reasonable chance that it may not be a good fit or a great fit for your segment 0 customer. The go-to-market strategy needs to be factored in right at the start of your product design process. Every time I sit down with a fresh team, with a new team of founders who've never done products before, and I ask them, what is your plan to get to your first customer? How will you find your first customer? The most common response, without fail, irrespective of where I am in the world, is a social media / network launch. I'm going to put this on my LinkedIn profile, share it on Insta or Facebook. While that may be true for certain products, it's not true for all products, and it's unlikely to scale in a big way, especially when you're looking for segment 0 customer. Second response, also most common response, is I've done a fairly detailed, in-depth customer segmentation analysis. I have a good sense of what my different customer personas look like. I'm a technology guy. I've sort of built the tech part of this. Right now, to make sure that this product gets out in the market, I'm going to hire a marketing team. Or even better, because I have more money and I have a bigger budget, I'm actually going to go out and hire a product team. And then I'm going to get that product team to write a GTM plan. The worst of all possible myths, a launch event, a big launch event. We're going to allocate some test marketing spend to see whether the product is a good fit for the customer that we're trying to work with. A social network launch doesn't always work, has its own cost, has its own challenges, is very difficult to scale, especially at the initial startup / discovery / launch segment 0 phase A stage. Customer segmentation by itself is not enough. There are actually a lot of additional work that you have to do beyond the initial segmentation analysis to deliver on this promise. Onboarding a marketing team tends to be a disaster. A separate product team that has a separate functional responsibility compared to the original technology product team also turns out to be a disaster. Writing a GTM plan by itself is no good if it's only written at the end of the product development life cycle. A launch event is a lecture by itself. Launch is not an event. Launch, just like GTM, is a process. It's a sequence of events, and you have to make sure that you plan it out. Test marketing spend is possibly the best of all ideas, but the success and failure of this test marketing spend is a function of when is that test marketing done. Go-to-market strategy is a process. You try things and they fail, and you try something else again, which then suggests that you need time to run those experiments and run those iterations. But you also need capital and budget for that. What is the process? Validate for n is equal to 1. Now, when I say n is equal to 1, this is one customer, not segment, not a collection of customers. Validate for n is equal to 1. Make it work for one customer from segment 0. Primary use for segment 0 customers is not profitability. Primary use for segment 0 customers is to build the foundation for traction with segment 1 customers. What do you validate? You validate the answers to these 4 questions. Who is the customer? Why? Why are they buying my product? What is it exactly that they're buying, and where do I find them? Validation comes in many forms. The best validation is dollars in the bank. The customer takes out his wallet, takes out his credit card, and shares the detail with you so that you can send him an invoice for $100. Short of that validation, I'd also settle for a testimonial. A segment 1 customer requires some element of trust. Think of trust as a river. Every time you engage with a customer, every time you have an interaction with a customer, you add to the flow. And as the flow increases, the size or the breadth or the depth of the river also increases. Trust is also a feedback loop. Trust builds every single time you run through the loop. Ultimately, you build trust to a point where you're able to establish a connection. Connection is a function of your ability to understand your customer has a path. Your customer has a life arc. That life arc leads to dreams. That life arc leads to gains that they're seeking, wants and needs that they have, pains that they're suffering as customers. Large part of these elements are driven by their ambitions, by their aspirations, and by their dreams. You have to understand customers. How do you understand customers? You understand customers by conversing and engaging with them, and by looking at the feedback that they're sharing with you, and then acting on that feedback so that they accept the fact that what they tell you is in front of somebody who acts on it. This product owner and this product was essentially designed for me. And once I accept the fact that this product was designed for me as a customer, then the conversion conversation and the conversion process is fairly easy. The reason why we're emphasizing so much on trust is because trust leads to trial, trials lead to conversions. If you understand the process of trust, then the GTM strategy essentially is a trust building strategy. How do you build trust? Outside of the connection, the engagement, the conversation and feedback, what are other drivers of trust that make a difference? Go-to-market. What exactly is it, and how do you go about doing that? Go-to-market is understanding the product life cycle. How do products behave? Essentially focus on understanding how do you tackle the segment 0 challenge. How do you convert these customers? How do you get these customers to buy your product when you have no traction, no background, no history, no track record? Which then suggests that a go-to-market strategy cannot happen at the end, has to happen right at the beginning. And it doesn't stop at the beginning, it's core part of your product development life cycle. What is that process based on? That process is based on getting the product in front of customers and then ideally getting them to try and buy it. Try is a function of trials. And how do we get to trial? We only get to trial if we can build a relationship of trust with our customers. And when we bring all of these components together, relationship with a customer is based on our ability to establish a connection with them. My name is Jawad Ahmed Fareed. I teach product development as a professor of practice at IBA Karachi. If you have a question, drop me a line at jawad@financetrainingcourse.com or look me up on LinkedIn.